2020 presidential hopefuls calling to expand the Supreme Court and even impose term limits.
But is this a good idea? Is it even an okay idea? Supreme Court expert Mark Chenoweth joins us now with that. Mark, President Trump has had two picks at this point. They've both driven the liberals crazy. I suspect this has got something to do with it.
No doubt. I think, in particular, the fact that that these picks were, well, especially Justice Gorsuch, I think drives them crazy because that vacancy occurred during President Obama's administration. And I think what folks forget is that President Obama's two selections he did make replaced justices who had been appointed by Republican presidents. So,
Mark, you say that doing this, packing the courts, would make it undermine, if I can read, the court's legitimacy and credibility. Why do you say that?
Well, the Supreme Court does not have the same democratic pedigree that the executive branch and the legislative branch has. And so if you start having the judiciary become something that is based on something other than the rule of law, if it just becomes a matter of counting noses, becomes a matter of increasing the number of justices just in order to get votes, the outcomes that you want, that's not really a judicial process anymore.
Yeah, it is sad to see even the Supreme Court becoming so political these days. This guy, Buttigieg from Indiana, who is a mayor there, and he's a pretty pragmatic guy. He wants to have, I think, 10, and then those 10 select another 5. If you try to do that, is that even constitutional? I mean, could they even implement that without a major change of the Constitution?
No, that would not be constitutional. Having the justices select additional justices would not be in line with the Constitution. So that would require a constitutional amendment, and I don't think that would be feasible.
Mark, how do you feel about what appears to be a lot of people on the left trying to change so much to our Constitution, trying to change so many rules right now just because they don't like who has power at this given moment? What does that do for us going forward?
I think that what that does is it makes people concerned about what the motivations are here. If it's power that folks are in search of, which I think it is, then you have to be very skeptical about these long-term structural changes. You don't know what problems are going to come along in the next several years. We have a structure in place that has worked very well for 200 years, and to change it based on someone's current desires for power is a very risky thing to do.
Yeah. And then you start thinking about, Ruth Bader Ginsburg and how much longer she's got on the court, and if the president gets reelected. And I suspect that you would say that if Hillary Clinton had won in 2016, this would not be a conversation at all.
Oh, I think that's right. But I think this is something you hear talk about on both sides of the aisle. I think that you hear whispers on the Republican side of the aisle that Justice Thomas should step down while President Trump is in office, so that vacancy doesn't occur down the road, for example. And I think that's the parallel of what the Democrats are worried about with either primarily Justice Ginsburg, but also Justice Breyer having an untimely demise.
Interesting stuff. It is so political right now. It's something to say.
Yeah, it is. How do you see this playing out in the end?
Hopefully, how this will play out is that none of these reforms will come to pass. I think that one of the things that these candidates might be doing is trying to cow the current majority on the court from voting the way that it might otherwise vote. And so even if they don't get the reforms that they claim to be wanting, they might still have that interim effect. I hope that doesn't happen as well, but I certainly hope that these changes of adding more justices to the court don't come about, because I do think it would severely undermine the credibility of the Supreme Court in the long run.
Interesting. Okay, Mark, thank you so much. We appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.